All right, everyone, welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're tackling a story that has the financial world buzzing and maybe a little bit nervous too.
Yeah, you could say that.
MicroStrategy, the business intelligence giant, is making a pretty wild, some would even say reckless bet
I think reckless is a word some people are using, yeah.
on Bitcoin. They're planning to increase their shares, get this, by 10 billion,
That's right, 10 with a B.
more than 30 times. Way more than 30 times what they have right now. And they're doing all of this to buy, you guessed it, even more Bitcoin.
Yep, they're going all in. Doubling down,
Yeah.
tripling down, whatever you want to call it.
Exactly. So we're going to take a deep dive into this. What does it mean for MicroStrategy? What does it mean for their investors? And maybe even bigger, what does it mean for the future of cryptocurrency? On the corporate stage, what does it mean for all of these big companies?
Yeah, it's a huge story with potentially massive implications.
Totally. So first things first, MicroStrategy. This isn't their first Bitcoin rodeo, right?
Definitely not. They've been on this Bitcoin train for a while now. It all started back in, I think it was 2020, when they made this big decision to make Bitcoin their primary reserve asset.
Okay, so for our listeners who maybe aren't like financial experts or whatever, what exactly does that mean? What is a reserve asset?
So think of it this way. A reserve asset is kind of like a company's safety net. It's those assets they hold on to protect their capital, to make sure they're stable, and to weather any economic storms, really.
Okay, makes sense.
It's their financial fortress, so to speak. Traditionally, these assets are things like, well, everyone knows about gold, right? The classic safe haven.
Yep.
Also, US dollars, real estate is a big one, bonds. But MicroStrategy, they see Bitcoin as their digital gold, you could say.
Interesting. So they're basically saying we're going to protect ourselves against inflation with Bitcoin.
Exactly. And their logic goes beyond the traditional safe haven argument for gold.
Okay, how so?
Well, they firmly believe that Bitcoin, because it's decentralized and because there's a limited supply,
Yeah.
only 21 million Bitcoin will ever exist.
Right.
It gives them a hedge against inflation, a protection against inflation that you just can't get from, say, gold or bonds. They're looking ahead. They're betting on a future where Bitcoin becomes this global store of value, this really important thing that people use to store their wealth. And they think it's going to be even bigger than gold eventually.
Wow. That's a big bet.
It is.
So they've been, since 2020, they've been steadily adding to their Bitcoin stash.
Oh, yeah, consistently.
I mean, they're one of the biggest holders out there as far as companies go, right?
Absolutely. One of, if not the biggest. It's hard to track precisely, but they're definitely up there.
Yeah, they're up there. But this latest move, this, 10 billion share increase,
Right.
that's a whole other level. It's like I don't know, it's like they're putting all their chips on the table.
Yeah, it's an all-in bet, and everyone's watching to see what happens.
Yeah, holding the breath,
Right.
you know. So obviously there's risk involved here, right? What are the main risks that we're talking about?
Well, for the existing shareholders, the biggest concern is dilution. Imagine,
Dilution.
imagine you own a piece of land, right?
Okay.
And suddenly it gets divided up into many smaller plots
What's it?
because more people are buying in. So your portion of that land, it shrinks, even if the overall value of the land goes up.
I see.
That's kind of the challenge MicroStrategy is facing here. They're gambling that the value of Bitcoin is going to skyrocket so much that it more than makes up for that initial dilution.
But isn't it like incredibly risky to put so much faith, so much capital into just one asset?
Yeah.
What are the people who are against this? What are they saying?
Well, the traditional thinking, and it makes sense, is that you want to diversify your investments.
Like, don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly. When you spread your assets across different classes, it helps to reduce your risk. So a lot of critics of MicroStrategy, they say this laser focus on Bitcoin, okay, it could pay off big time, sure, but it also exposes them to a ton of volatility.
Because Bitcoin is volatile, right? I mean, it's up one day, down the next.
Oh yeah, it's famous for its price swings. It's a roller coaster.
Yeah.
And those swings, they're influenced by so many things. Market sentiment, what people are feeling, obviously, regulations, any rumors of new regulations, social media, what people are saying online. It's crazy.
It's a wild world. So what happens to MicroStrategy if that roller coaster suddenly plunges?
Well, that's the multi-billion-dollar question. Their whole future, it gets tied to Bitcoin. If the value tanks, they could lose a huge chunk of their holdings. I mean, it could be really bad.
Yeah, that's a lot to risk. Makes you think, would you be comfortable betting your company on Bitcoin like that?
It's a tough one.
It is. But to play devil's advocate here, let's say their bet pays off. Let's say Bitcoin really does take off the way they think it will. What does that look like? What are the potential rewards here?
Well, if Bitcoin explodes in value the way they're predicting, the rewards could be astronomical. Their asset base, it could grow exponentially. I mean, we're talking insane amounts of money.
Wow.
And it would solidify as a true pioneer in the business world.
Yeah.
This company that wasn't afraid to embrace the future of finance, you know? And maybe even more importantly, it could inspire other companies to follow in their footsteps.
Right. It could start a trend.
Exactly.
Like they're trying to create a future where Bitcoin is like a normal thing in every company's accounts.
Totally. Just as common as stocks and bonds.
Imagine that. Companies using Bitcoin for everyday transactions, paying their employees in Bitcoin.
It's a bold vision.
It is.
And they're right at the forefront of it.
And it's not like they're completely alone. I mean, we're seeing other big companies like Tesla starting to, dip their toes into the crypto pool as well.
Yeah, it's definitely gaining traction. That institutional interest, that's what really adds fuel to the fire. It legitimizes Bitcoin in a lot of people's eyes.
So big picture here, MicroStrategy's decision.
Mm-hmm.
It's a high-stakes gamble, right?
Absolutely.
Huge potential for incredible success, but also, some potentially major consequences if things don't go their way.
Yeah, I mean, they're all in on Bitcoin. They're convinced the future is bright. They think the risks are worth taking. And it's stirred up a lot of debate. It has everyone asking, is this like a turning point for Bitcoin the moment it finally gets accepted by the corporate world?
Right.
Or is this a cautionary tale in the making?
Don't do what they did.
Exactly.
Yeah. And, I guess only time will tell. But MicroStrategy's move, it really shines a light on how cryptocurrency is changing, how it's becoming a bigger and bigger part of the global financial landscape.
Definitely. It's a fascinating evolution to watch.
It really is. So what do you think? Is this a brilliant move?
Mm-hmm.
Or are they being reckless?
Yeah, it's a real head scratcher.
We'd love to hear what you all think. We've given you a lot to consider.
Plenty to chew on.
So let us know your take in the comments. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Always a pleasure.